If you've popped by before, you might have heard myself or King Z reminding folks that adaptations are hard. Books, video games, comics, doesn't matter. It's tough bringing things to the big screen. Most of the time, they come across as depressing, low-effort cash grabs that wouldn't recognize the real source material if Halo's Master Chief or Street Fighter's Major Guile Sonic boomed them in the face. Every now and then they get it right, and movies like Sonic and Super Mario Bros. Demolish the box office. Now I hear you saying, come on Winterwolf, get to the point. Where does Borderlands stack up adaptation-wise? Alright, fine. You dragged it out of me. Borderlands on an aesthetic level was about as perfect an adaptation as you could likely get for a modestly budgeted Hollywood movie. Yes, I know what you're about to say. You're about to say, but Winterwolf, this thing's got like a 6% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Did you bang your head getting into the car and forget what you just saw? Did the check Eli Roth sent finally clear? No, don't you worry. Winterwolf wouldn't sell his spotless soul for a couple of zeros. You just weren't listening. I said the aesthetic was about as perfect as you'd expect. The rest of the movie, story-wise, effects-wise, performance-wise, well, I'll say this. I no longer need narcotic sleep aids. I could just buy this 100-minute snooze fest on Blu-ray when it drops next Tuesday and not run the risk of needing detox from a raging Ambien addiction. Now let's get the synopsis out of the way and then I'll break down some specifics of likes and dislikes. Here's the synopsis. Key to everything Tiny Tina is kidnapped/liberated by a hit from the Honey I Shrunk the Kid shrink-ray-sized Roland from a maximum security facility. Her father, who probably should have just been Handsome Jack, considering all the other liberties they took, hires totally in her mid-20s Lilith to bring Daddy's girl safely home. But uh-ohs, things aren't what they seem, and it turns out that not Handsome Jack only wants Tina returned because she's a piece of the puzzle that will locate and open a legendary vault on Pandora left behind by a powerful race of aliens who'd once controlled the galaxy. Lots of shots are fired, stylized slow-mo gets copy-pasted a few times, we see some familiar sights from the games, and then an hour and a half later, a final showdown, wet farts on the screen, with destinies revealed, Jack Black doing his thing, and here we are at 7% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, as always, I want to start things off with the howls. These are the good, these are the pros, few as they may be. Honestly, and I mean no BS here, this actually looked like Borderlands. The look of the Crimson Raiders, Psychos, and various sets like the Desert Wastelands, Mad Moxie's Bar, the decrepit shantytowns, the weird quad vehicles, and the assortment of recognizable corporate logos like Dahl, Atlas, and Hyperion were all plastered everywhere. They even managed to include the familiar bus ride on the way in at the first part of the game, and a couple of clips of the weapon vending machines for good measure. It legit looked like the games I used to like, and it was fun picking out as many bits of fan service as I did. Now I know I'm going to take some flack on this one, but I thought Claptrap looked and sounded solid. His banter was on point, and the various verbal jabs mostly landed and amused me. Some of the more passive-aggressive, under-the-breath digs actually managed to pull a snicker out of me. Wasn't expecting that. I know Jack Black can rub people the wrong way, but I've never really minded the guy's body of work, minus that god-awful appearance in Mando Season 3 alongside Lizzo the Hutt. And in my third thing that I guess I didn't mind, I'm just going to slide it in the howl section here. Tiny Tina didn't annoy me as much as I thought she would from the trailers, but in doing so, I think she actually failed to capture the psychosis of the character. Not the actor's fault at all, the fault was in the writing. Maybe they purposefully leaned away from playing her up as the key to everything female character trope. Not sure on that one. Alright, here's the snarls. These are the negatives, the cons. This is the stuff I didn't like. I'm going to get a minor one out of the way first. I thought the sound mixing was very weird in this movie. I've never really been a big critic of things like that before, but there was enough garblediness going on that I figured I'd mention it here. Loads of dialogue sounded like the cast were trying to talk through sweaty gym socks duct taped into their mouths. May just have been my theater's audio setup, but I thought it was worth mentioning here because I'd never noticed it before in that cinema in other movies. Alright, here's the first legit big one. The whole thing was more misguidedly cast than a production of Glee using a 4-pack a day for 30-year chain-smoking emphysema-diagnosed choir. After seeing the film, we're all going to sleep just fine for our judging ahead of time that Kevin Hart never should have played Roland. The obvious lack of physical stature put me in the same place as something like the Batwoman series, where they just can't sell me on somebody who's all of 5'3", being able to really take it to their opponent when it comes to the fisticuffs. There were also several scenes where the shot would flip back and forth between Lilith and Roland, and Lilith's eye line was always angled significantly down. It just didn't do the concept of a hardened mercenary vault hunter character any favors in terms of believability. And that actually brings us to Cate Blanchett, who, while still beyond gorgeous and talented, wasn't quite right for Lilith here. Sure, she looked the part, but when the action required, well, action, I guess, And I mean absolutely no disrespect again, her age got in the way, resulting in some butchered action sequences that felt disjointed and odd to watch. And on top of that, she kind of played around with a strange accent cadence to speech in this that I'm not sure was on purpose. Maybe she was directed to do so, maybe she just phoned it in, but something felt just not quite right. With the obvious from the trailer problems out of the way, we hit my second main criticism. Slow the fuck down. I get you, Borderlands. Truly I do. You want to start off all ADHD and kinetic. You want to grab the audience by the throat and drag them along for the thrill ride of a lifetime. But seriously, I'll say it again, chill the fuck out. You're supposed to feel more like a roller coaster than a base jump from the Shanghai Tower. You're supposed to have some twists and turns, peaks and valleys. You need to set some things up and then pay them off later. You gotta pump the brakes from time to time and let things breathe. Otherwise, when the time comes later on, I'm just not gonna care and will honestly likely have forgotten what all had happened. Which brings me to my third and final issue with Borderlands, and I suspect this is where most fans of the video game franchise will tend to agree. I want to couch this one for a second time mentioning that I appreciate the look of the movie and how the producers, writers, director of Borderlands actually took some time for looking into the franchise so they could properly draw inspiration from source. We've got plenty of examples of what happens when they don't do that, looking at you, Halo, Wheel of Time, and Cowboy Bebop, and about a billion others at this point. So in this case, I'm thinking they actually pulled too much from the source. Sure, they got the look of the world right and its inhabitants down pretty well. I especially want to give special note to the Psychos. I thought they were done solid. But the script pulled too many ideas from several of the many games. They mixed and matched characters, plot elements, and story arcs from 3 of the 4 mainline games that I could see, and I'm not an expert on Borderlands, and it wound up feeling like there were just too many flavors thrown in the blender. And they managed to do it while still leaving some core concepts, like the characters' unique abilities, completely ignored on the table. More importantly, though, they blenderized too much story in service of their protagonist, Lilith. Now, I get why focusing the movie around a single original character makes sense, especially when you slide in a legit A-lister like Cate Blanchett into the role, but the blistering pace never let anything sink in for the character. In the game, Lilith is a siren who has some unique abilities like phase walking and invisibility, but here she's a bounty hunter, which she doesn't become until the second game, who discredits vault hunting at every turn, suddenly becomes the key to everything in the last 20 minutes, then becomes the Firehawk, which in the games was just a code name and not a mythological champion sent by the advanced race of Iridians that created the vaults, and then for some other reason gets called a siren randomly by Tannis for no discernible reason. Oh, and did I mention how terribly cast Jamie Lee was in that role? The movie also doesn't really do itself any favors in explaining some key details that I guess they really don't matter in the long run because they were obviously going for shoot-'em-up video game on the silver screen and not really trying for anything deeper. That's kind of a shame because it meant when the script expected me to give a single rat's asshole for the events going down, all I could muster was another check of the time on my phone. Questions like, why did Roland spring Tina in the first place? No idea. Did not handsome Jack simply get lucky that Lilith was actually the key to everything when Tina turned out not to be? That's pretty damn convenient. How did Claptrap know when Lilith returned to Pandora? The movie tells us her mother programmed him to find her 40 years prior when they'd been forced to leave their colony. How the hell did he know she actually came back? Fuck if I know. Why is Tiny Tina in this at all? The character could have been completely cut from the movie, and the storyline of finding the vault's keys for Tannis, which is part of the main game, could have still been the main narrative thrust here as well, while keeping a semi-interesting character like Tiny Tina on deck for a sequel, had this one not obviously included the tank. All in all, I'll say this for Borderlands. It's a dumpster fire, but not a nuclear hot dumpster fire like the movie adaptations of Street Fighter, Double Dragon, or Mortal Kombat Annihilation. But honestly, I haven't been this bored at an event since a college girlfriend dragged me to see a drama club production of the Vagina Monologues. Sadly, 2024's Borderlands gets the first official Win a Wolf rejects. Find your game elsewhere, weary hunters. Until then, stay frosty.